All right. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. It does say Anne, but it is Ellie.
It is Ellie.
Yeah.
No, I just assumed you were going to jump in at that point. I don't know why.
No, I back down now. I wait.
I had that
like
feeling in my water that she was going to go for it.
Maybe I should have just pounced.
Should have pounced.
Anyway.
Well, let's look at today's front pages for you. So, The Express has Boris Johnson saying Rishi's deal will not take back control. That's all to do with the Northern Ireland Protocol.
The Eye reports on MI5's missed chance to stop Manchester Arena bomber.
For The Mirror, teachers were heroes during the pandemic. How dare Hancock and Williamson ridicule them, all to do with those leaked messages.
And finally, The Guardian has Tory anger as Labour hires Partygate official.
OK, let's get into some of those headlines in a bit more detail with broadcaster Liz Kershaw and co-founder of property empire Yopa, Andrew Barclay. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Liz, let's start with the Financial Times, actually, where Antony Blinken, US Secretary of State's been meeting Sergei Lavrov, hasn't he?
Yeah, Putin, one of Putin's henchmen. This is at the G7 meeting in India. And they had a side meeting at the invitation of the US. It only lasted 10 minutes. Apparently it was pretty frosty. And overall, there was no real outcome of the talks at the G7 in total. There was no statement. Usually at the end of the G7, they all stand up for a photograph, don't they, and release a major statement, but that wasn't forthcoming. But India, the hosts, simply released a synopsis of what was discussed, and India was trying to keep the focus on food and energy security, but it very much revolved around the Third World War break out. And that's what's reported on the front page of the Financial Times. There's an article on page 4 extending that, but the most interesting one is later in the paper, an analysis piece. And it's fascinating stuff because it analyses India's role as a potential peacemaker because they are steadfastly remaining neutral, but also looking at what China's options are, what they're likely to do. And it starts a few things of China having made really valuable contributions so far. First of all, not adding fuel to the fire, and then China's stance against the use of nuclear weapons in Europe has reduced the prospect of nuclear war, if not entirely ruled it out. And it's just analysing how close, literally, China and Russia are. They share a border. They are neighbours. They're quite close in philosophy. But, as I said, China is so far steadfastly trying to remain on the fence. It says in this article, which is heartwarming and reassuring, that it's unlikely that China will supply real heavy firepower, real arms. And
the China situation is very interesting, because it's difficult to understand quite what their strategy is.
Yeah, well, it's saying that it's impossible for China to completely stay out of it because they are such a huge power and have declared friendship with Russia. But at the same time, they do seemingly seem to be putting the brakes on, and they have helped in other situations, the Korean Peninsula and the Iran nuclear negotiations. So we always seem to think of China, don't we, as the baddies, the bogeymen, and like the Hood in Thunderbird, you know, ha ha ha, Dr. Evil or something like that.
Yeah.
But actually, apparently, and I'm surprised but reassured, they are behaving far more responsibly than some of the more hysterical reportage would have us believe, which is a good thing. Oh, we can all sleep in our beds this weekend.
Yeah, a little bit better.
Andrew, let's look at something totally different now. Really interesting investigation in the Times about unsafe schools where Jewish boys can barely read English.
Yeah, it's pretty concerning. I mean, so it's a story that kids as young as 5 up to 16 in the Stamford Hill community are sort of being failed by the educational standards that the rest of society needs to sort of abide by. And I think that it's, in some ways, a little bit difficult, sort of treading on eggshells because for fear of sounding anti-Semitic. But a lot of people, I've spent a bit of time up in that community, and a lot of people do disagree with it because we do need to abide by educational standards, just like we do need to abide by medical standards or biological standards or any other standards that we require for society to function correctly. And so it is a bit concerning. The legislation that was shelved last year needs to come back, and there is a place for the traditions.
What legislation is that? The legislation that would require all these specialist schools to fall within the curriculum?
Precisely. I mean, they're basically exploiting a loophole that if they keep the curriculum very narrow, they can avoid abiding by the educational standards that the rest of society needs to follow.
Well, just in terms of integration, for these kids when they're getting out into the real world and they want to, you want everyone to be able to live whatever lifestyle they want, but they've got to have the option to integrate, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because it's sort of to do with a very traditional religious group that it might be difficult to address. But the truth of the matter is, if this was any other community, then you would, they would need to comply by the same standards. And the kids are being failed as 5 to 16-year-olds can't even speak English in in this country. That's not great. And a lot of people in the community actually agree with it, that this needs to be changed and the loophole needs to be closed by the government.
And the findings are quite concerning as well, because it's not just about education and about literacy. It also found that they are being routinely beaten.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's incredibly concerning. I think we can start by closing the loophole, and I think addressing the sort of curriculum issues to begin with. But it's a very concerning story, and I think if it was happening anywhere else, maybe without the sort of religious aspect, then this would have been dealt with a while back.
Okay, an interesting investigation.
I went to a Catholic convent, and from the age of 5, and it's a long time ago, but we were taught things and views were expressed by the nuns that were completely at odds with modern thinking and general society. And thank goodness for my dad, who would sort of put us right in the car on the way home. And all I can say to reassure people, and hopefully this would be the case, whether it's with Muslim schools now or Jewish schools, that the child at the end of the day thinks, you know what, that's a load of... and makes their own mind up.
Well,
carves their own way.
Well, that's meant to be the point of education, isn't it? Not to tell people what to believe, but to empower them to make their own decisions.
I can't believe we still have religion schools founded on segregation into religious groups.
I went to a Church of England school. Now, it's not about segregation there. It's not, but it means that there is an ethos at the school.
What I would say, though, is that we're talking about kids who are as young as 5 here, so they can't necessarily think for themselves. So I think that's sort of on us to safeguard them and make sure that they have the basics. And I think speaking English in this country is one of them. I think
you can't integrate without a language, can you, really?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, there's an argument for the curriculum to be applied in all schools, I think. Liz, let's have a look at the Telegraph and more leaked WhatsApp messages.
Well, this is the gift that keeps on giving. It really is. And I was about to post it on Twitter today, and then one of my followers beat me to it. They said, how can anybody in their right mind think they can hand over their WhatsApp stream and, it'll be kept in confidence? Is this man, Hancock, just stupid?
Well, to be fair, Isabella Oakeshott signed an NDA, didn't she? A non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, but she's got form, hasn't she? She's got a track record.
I mean, she has betrayed him in that sense.
Yeah. Anyway, it's all out there now, much for our delight and amusement.
There'll be a lot more to come.
It's only day 3. I don't know, I can't remember now how long the MP's expenses reportage went on with the Telegraph. They did a similarly great piece of journalism in exposing that. But it's day 3 and it's on to the police now. And despite ministers claiming the police were operationally independent of the government, the leaked messages, basically reveal that they weren't. August 2020, Simon Case, a permanent secretary at the cabinet, so a non-elected official, said, who is actually delivering enforcement? And that's when Mr. Hancock replied, I think we're going to have to get heavy with the police. And again in 2021, January the 10th, shortly after another lockdown had begun, Hancock wrote, the PM was in very good shape in that meeting. The plod have got to have their marching orders, and this is what led to people being arrested in parks
on park
for
benches,
walking and having a coffee with their friends, and drones. and
well, yes,
all the
it
rest
may
of
have
it.
gone over the top, but see, what worries me about all of this, and I know it all makes great headlines and all the rest of it, is the fact that it then gets taken out of context. I mean, if you're bringing in emergency legislation to have a lockdown,
Yeah.
you agree with that or not, and it's not being enforced,
Yeah.
then you're going to say things like, in a casual well, we need to crack down on the police.
I agree. We say things in WhatsApp, don't we? You and I might exchange WhatsApps during the week, and we'd say things we'd never say in a broadcast situation.
Yeah.
So that it's just entertaining when you see it in its rare form. And for instance, when people were coming back from abroad or entering this country, visiting, and they were put into hotels at airports, and the sort of matey banter that was used to describe this, and the jokes. Mr. Case, the same individual from the Cabinet Office, joked with Matt Hancock. We're giving big families all the sweets and putting pop stars in box rooms. I'd like to see some of the faces of those people coming off the plane in first class and into a Premier Inn shoebox. It's not very...
Well, come on. I think we'd all agree with that.
No, it's funny though, isn't it? And so it goes on. Christmas being cancelled, the decision to introduce the tier 4 lockdown when we were in all these different confusing tiers was taken by Boris Johnson in number 10 whilst there was the Christmas party, very loud and easily heard, going on in another room, and I think that's what's made people angry. I mean, this as these revelations started, my mum died on March the 17th, 2020 in a care home on her own. And we hadn't been able to go for 2 weeks before that, because before the government introduced lockdowns, the care homes decided to do it. So when I started to read about that on Monday, that's what really upset me. And I can imagine that thousands of people will be tempted now with that evidence to sue the government. But then on the other hand, I think, well, if I sued them and got thousands of pounds, it just comes out of the budget for helping other people. On the subject of an inquiry which the GBNEWS People's Poll has polled about today, I was reading this week, Sweden and France, they just got down, cracked on with it. They were very, very ruthless and thorough in France. They raided the home of the equivalent of Matt Hancock, the Minister of Health. Went through all his files, personal correspondence, but they wrapped it up in under 12 months. It's been done and dusted for a while. I don't know why we're being told ours has to go on for another 3 years.
Well, no, I don't know. It seems to be the way we do things over here, doesn't it? We're going to leave it there for the time being. We'll catch up with you both a little bit later on.